the season of Purim, the title of today's study is Esther, a moment of destiny. Esther, a moment of destiny. You know, the story of Purim, or the story of Esther, is one of the most significant events in the history of Israel. I mean, it's a key focus. It's a key piece. It means to understanding what was all entailed and how weighty what transpired at that time. The whole future of God's covenantal plan with Israel at that particular point, with the study of Esther, the whole future of his covenantal plan all rested upon one single girl, one single lady at that time. This is an incredible story that reveals to me, as we will share today, I think we can see 6 powerful life lessons that can come out of that story that I can share with you. Life lessons that deal with courage, divine timing, and the supreme love of God. Captured in this story, this incredible story of Esther. So traditional and its historical part of this season is that we read the story of Esther. They do it every year during this time. The Megillah, the scroll, the book of Esther. See, because we all know that the celebration of Purim finds its origin in the festival. It finds its origin in the book of Esther itself. So I'm going to strongly encourage, as we stay enlightened with the season, walking in sync with the season, that we read that story. Boy, you talk about a movie script. You take that story, you can make a powerful movie if you move with the heart and the spirit. I've seen some people, if you're unsaved, you can't do it justice. I've seen Hollywood step on that thing and they just done it injustice over and over. But, you know, you're talking about script. I strongly suggest that we read the story. It's incredible. I had someone give me a descriptive at one time. It says, it sounds like a fairy tale. Katie, that was you. You're supposed to nod at that moment. And it's true. It does. It's an incredible story. But for time's sake, I'm just going to paraphrase. I'm going to tell the story. But I'm going to encourage you guys just to read it. So I'm just going to tell the story. And you can fill in all the gaps. You know, Esther, so in telling the story, Esther was a beautiful Jewish woman. This is about it. Beautiful Jewish woman living in Persia who was raised by her cousin Mordecai. And then through a series of divine events, the queen of Persia was deposed, taken out. And a search was made for her replacement. Someone who could sit beside the king during the season. And as a result, they end up holding a beauty contest as such, in which all the maidens, young maidens of the province was brought to the palace. And Esther was one of them. But because there was something very, very special about her, she is selected above all the other ones and crowned queen. But as they brought her in and she was being crowned, before her coronation, she had been instructed by her cousin Mordecai. Let me back up one second. You know, when you read the story, typically we tell the story, this is a very noisy time in the sanctuary. Because of all times, when they tell the story of Esther, you know, they get audience participation so everyone can understand what is going on. So as you read the story, if I was to read it, which I'm not going to do today, but if you go to read it, the audience sinks into what's being said. And they said, whenever they talk about this, the beauty of, or mention the name of Esther. See, now these guys are veterans. When you hear this, when they hear the name Esther, they give a shout. And then when we speak in terms of her cousin, who's very instrumental in her life, whose name is Mordecai. Okay. We don't have them now. Did everyone pick up noise makers, rattlers, or anything? Oh, yeah. I'm not going to hang too long with the story, but I'll make sure everyone participates. You'll hand out some of these noise makers. So it's more than just your yays and nays. You can be loud and be a little boisterous with it. There we go. Brandy, they handed out some of these noisemakers so they go tell the story. Okay, all right, okay. Okay, now we'll go back. We're going to kind of tell the story of Esther in an abbreviated form, but at least ways we can embody the heart and spirit of Esther. Everywhere, when they go to tell the story, all the audience participation is an integral part of telling the story. So again, the queen is disposed, and then there was a search that began in order to replace her. In the replacement of her, they had all the young maidens of the providence that are brought to the palace. And of all of them, Esther, yes, she was one of them. And because there is something very special about Esther, she is selected and crowned queen of the kingdom. And her cousin Mordecai had instructed her not to reveal her Jewish heritage at that time. So she's taken to the palace as queen. Her heritage is hidden. The story contains a horrible villain named Haman, who was a very vengeful and evil man who hated Mordecai. And he birthed a plot to destroy both Mordecai and his people. And in order to make this happen, this Haman, he deceived the king in securing a decree of destruction for all the Jews to take place on a single day, determined by casting of lots, or Purim, as they're called. That's where we get the name Purim. The casting of lots determined the day in which all the nation was to be destroyed. The news of this decree was given to Esther by Mordecai. And when she heard the news, she heard and learned of the decree, it scared her to death. She was frightened. And her initial response was to remain silent. And Mordecai reminds her of her unique place in history. And that silence at this time wasn't an option. Then speaking of God's purposeful timing in all things, he proclaims these words to her. For who knows whether you didn't come to your royal position for such a time as this? And see, in saying so, she had to embrace and understand the depth of what was being spoken. Because no, silence wasn't an option. They can see there's something happening in the chain of events. There's more things taking place, specifically when you look at her life. Where she come from and where she sits. This is not by happerchance. There's much more to the story than what's being seen. And when Mordecai spoke those words to her, she had to stop and reflect and understand the origin. She knew, because she knew that going before the king without being summoned would be a death sentence. So before making a life or death decision, she calls for the people to join her in a 3-day vigil of a fast and prayer. You know, that's wise. This is not about knee-jerk reaction. This is critical. And when Mordecai said what he said, something dropped in her spirit and things start falling into place. And instead looking at him and says, okay, I'll go in tonight, I'll go in tomorrow. When I get back, I'll go in tonight. We'll do this. Or, okay, you said so, I don't know the full ramifications of it, but I'll do so. No, it said before she made a life or death decision, she says, with Mordecai, she says, have the people, all of them, the nation, to fast and pray with me for the next 3 days as I respond. So she does. And when she comes out, it says she puts on her royal attire. In this quiet time, let me step back one time. In this quiet time, she said when she goes to step before God's presence, and withholds all natural sustenance, gets her mind focused. She submits to the will of God's timing. Because when she comes out, she's no longer moving in her will. It's almost like what Yeshua said in the garden. See, when Yeshua was confronted, he knew. They say he already told the disciples what was going to transpire. He says, before they even came into Jerusalem, when he said, when the Son of Man enters the city, comes into Jerusalem, he's going to be put in the hands of simple men. They're going to taunt him, scourge him. They will kill him. But on the 3rd day, he will rise again. So I mean, he knew what was coming before him. But they said, after that Seder meal, he started going to the garden. He says, he went into the garden, and when the reality was all about him, he says, my soul agonizes. They said he fell and he sweated great drops of blood because he knew what was coming. And he said, Father, Abba, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. But not my will, but your will be done. Now, that's big. Here's Yeshua comes into the garden. When he says that, he submitted himself, bringing himself into alignment to the divine will. And we can find ourselves doing that at times. God, I don't want to do this. God, whatever you do, that just take this away. Stop this. I don't want to go through this. You say, but the thought comes in. Yeshua says, but not my will, but your will, because you know all things. See, that's what happened to her. She says, when she comes out and she says, when Mordecai told her, something got up in her and she got very fearful. She knew what she wanted to do. But in shutting herself up for 3 days, she says, she come under total submission that it was no longer her will, but God's will. She submitted herself to God's will and his timing. God, if it means so, when she came out, what she told, I will go before the king. If I die, I die. I will do this. So she goes before the king. Submitted to God's will and his timing, she walks before him, and when she walks in that door, I know that, I love, Hollywood just loved to blow this thing up, see her standing behind the door and she's walking in. And, you don't see them, but there's a 64-piece orchestra somewhere. Dun, 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 dun. You know, she walks in, and music's swelling, and a light comes down, and they have every step, dun, 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 and then do a slow motion on the king. Dun, I mean, just all swelling. You know, you're getting caught up in all this. But see, in real life, how many know we don't hear no bands? There's no orchestras. It's you in the event. So I can see her, she walks in, she probably walked that door and says, she walked before the door in the spirit of my wife. So my wife does this a lot. She probably walked in and said, Jesus. And opened the door. Jesus. I can see her say, Abba. And she just started walking. And so the king reaches out and holds the scepter to her. And not only did he hold out the scepter to her, she took his heart and had his heart in her hand. What would you want? What is your request? Up to half the kingdom. I'll give you anything. So she says she goes in, stands before him. Instead of life and death sentence, she has life and she has the favor of the king looking at her. And again, following the timing of God. King says, what do you request? And I know she probably won't say, you know, Haman probably sitting over here and people sitting all around. Oh, I like that. You guys are quick. Haman's probably sitting over here. And she looked at him and she says, and she could easily turn and says, he says, what do you want, Esther? Up to half the kingdom I give to you. She goes, said, that booger over there. The meanest thing you ever eat. I don't believe what he did. No. See, God is in charge. God's looking and saying, as he's moving, he's going to bring everything in line. Everything to come to bear. And she went to say, and it wasn't time. So she says, she invites the king. The king says, come to a banquet that I will prepare, and I will reveal it to you. And bring him with you. So he comes back. He comes back and they come to the banquet. He's enjoying, I know the king's sitting on edge. This is too much. This is too much. What do you want, Esther? Up to half the kingdom, I'll give you anything. And she said, God's timing. Come again tomorrow. I'll have another banquet tomorrow. And bring him too. And so they do it again. At that second banquet, the story says, she reveals Haman's evil plan. She tells him the demon-influenced plan that Haman had placed before him. So it tells him the story as the story concludes. It says, Haman's evil decree is thwarted. It's undone. Haman is hung on his own gallows. And the nation of Israel is saved. Before I say the end, I'll say that one more time. And the nation of Israel was saved. That is the story. I strongly urge each of you to go home just to read the story, fill in all the gaps in between. It's an incredible story, displaying the wondrous, hidden nature of God's hand. There's a nature about him that is incredible, a hidden nature of God's hand. And again, I believe from this story, there are 6 life lessons we can pull from there and we can apply to our lives. As you read through the story, I believe God says the scriptures are all for our admonition, for our growth. And from here, I think we can pull 6 life lessons. The first one is this. Number one, God has a plan for our lives. We hear that over and over. A lot of times it's overplayed. It's almost like saying sale in a store. It's used over and over to a point it almost gets diluted. And then the problem becomes in that is that when he does that, then the reality and the truth is so watered down, you've heard it so much, you feel about it, that you say, okay, yeah, I know, but, I don't know what it is. I'm just waiting to see, and, It's kind of like when Yeshua walked up to Mary and Martha, told them about their brother. They said, oh, God, Yeshua, if you had been here, he would have died. And Yeshua says, he will live again. And Martha, her heart's broken. She's heard that story. I know in the last day of the resurrection, I understand that, but he wouldn't have died. That was a big thing he just said. He said, your son will live. That's what God has a plan for our lives becomes. Neutral. But the truth is, God has a plan for our lives. See, without her knowledge, she didn't understand all the events that's taking place. She was functioning in the kingdom, walking her life out. But see, without her knowledge of even knowing of a divine plan was in action. Something was transpiring that she wasn't even unaware of, just like a lot of us are unaware of it. So without her knowledge, God was working behind the scenes and preparing the way for her destiny. The hiddenness of God's hand is all over her. As you read the text, you don't have to say the word. You see all the events unfolding, and look at God. They're taking place in her life. That's what God has been doing for many of us. I know there are times we can find ourselves crying out for God. God, where's my destiny? God, I just want to see what my plan is. I don't know, Father. They keep saying that. I just don't understand. But see, in all the words, we don't even realize that God's already at work. He's unfolded. He's moving things. Things are being shifted. See, they're not coming in the way that I would set things up. But God didn't birth me and tell me in his word that I knew you, I gifted you, I shaped you, I placed the skills in you all before you even entered this world. Before I put you in your mother's womb, he says, I had a place for you. I have thoughts of you. My thoughts are only of good. You are fearfully and wondrously made. Your gifts are going to make room for you. That's what he says. Oh, yeah, but right now, I can't see a way out of this. See, as you speak, you don't understand the hiddenness of his hand and what he's doing with all the events. See, we haven't even realized God's at work. See, when Esther moved in that position, God loved his people. He does. That's why she moved where she did. He loves us in the same capacity. It's not just her. He's not a respecter. He loves us. For some reason, he didn't create Esther's beauty and her charm for her and her alone. There was a reason why the scripture talks about she was more highly favored. She was gorgeous. I heard one commentator was talking about it and says, I bet she was just drop dead gorgeous. But he says, but her looks for what the king needed was being channeled and shaped. And see, as she's coming up, she can probably look in the mirror and look at herself, and she knows that she's just fair. But of all the maidens, of all of them, it's her looks, her charm, her mannerism, her upbringing, things that are being shaped within her. Yeah. It wasn't just for her. God had a plan to make it. And see, when she stepped into that palace, this was not about American Idol. This is not bringing your skill and seeing what's happening. Her crowning had nothing to do with her, what she's doing on her own. She couldn't walk in and say, I'm going to be the queen. This was not someone bellowing. You can say, well, she earns it, or she deserved it. Look how she's saying. She has nothing she can bring to the table. Something was taking place that stopped the heart of the king right where he's at. The looks was there. No, her crowning was not of her own making. but it's God's divine plan. God has a plan. 2, we are giving divine moments to alter circumstances. In our lives, God places us in situations where circumstances are going to be altered. God calls them, those acts that we come into, a divine moment. It's not something I orchestrated. That's something that's been placed before me. As believers, see, we know that there's no such things as accidents or coincidence. Oh, can you believe that? I just happened to be here, and guess who walked in? Or I was here, and I can't believe it. Something told me I should have done this, and I was just standing here, and look what happened. Isn't that something? Boy, it's a good thing I came in at that time, and I didn't wait till tomorrow. I don't know why. Something just told me I should show up today. And there, just by coincidence, they walk in, or this happened, or something told me. You know, something has a name. Okay. See, but as a believer, as one who knows him, sits him, so you can look back and you can try and say, my God, look at God. If I had just waited just longer, or he knew what I needed because I was praying, there's no one else there, and look what happened. It's not by accident. It's not by coincidence. Huh. See, a discerning spirit will recognize this as we look back. And we understand that God's timing is providential. He's moving throughout our life. You know, Nita has a saying, I heard her say it, and she said this: we'd have to learn to see God's hand in every situation. What's she saying? So I can look and I can poo-poo any event. God, I can never get this thing right. I don't understand. It's not the devil. Everything happens to me. I'm always just, you know. Are you looking at the glass half full or half empty? If you look at the event, there's something else happening. And the thought came in and says, if you can see God's hand, what it's doing in every situation. You know, you guys have been hearing me talking about this little dilemma I've been having at the house. I can moan and groan all I want to. But in it, I've been shaking my head and I've been saying, I'm seeing God's hand everywhere. I'm seeing God's hand everywhere. I see the preservation of life. I see the wisdom. I see the impartation. I'm watching favor happen. I'm watching right in the middle of all the situations. I'm just watching relationships develop. And it will kill me in the midst of it. Again, trying to look at God's hand. I can look at him and says, you know, I don't understand this. It's an electrical issue. I don't understand this. You know, everything was working. I went to bed, got up the next morning, ain't working. Oh, excuse me, isn't working. And John says, I don't understand what transpired. And then my brother, he makes this comment. Again, it still shakes me because I sit and I shake my head. I said, it's all working. He said, well, just because it's working don't mean it's right. That's what I said. Oh. He said, just because things are working don't mean that things were right. For example, one of the things that came out of it, we have one of the outlets that looked like it almost caught fire in the wall. It was working, but something was causing it short. Something was amiss. And then what could have been a tragedy was averted, either by a breaker or just something pop, stop it right there. I'm looking at the news and I'm watching, in fact, we went downtown in Perry, I'm watching this building all burn out. I'm going, hey, everybody says, did you see the fire in town? No. I said, you wouldn't believe it, just down by the theater. I go up and the building's all burnt out. I'm thinking, I wonder what happened. I'm on the news, they're talking about a family, a fire happened in the family. 3 children were killed that evening. Too much smoke and the parents couldn't get out. And these parents got to live with this. They didn't understand what transpired. Something set that house on fire. I said, we went to bed. And God got us up. I'm watching the outlet and I'm saying, what happened? And so as I walk through this, I'm saying, look at God. I'm seeing where he just averted something. So God's it's like the thought saying, you can complain about it, or someone could be doing a funeral right now. very easily. So I'm seeing God's hand in every situation. See, in confronting her fear, which is what the enemy will do to us in this month of uncovering our identity, one of the key things that he will do, he's going to stir in you fear. He's going to present giants. He's going to present obstacles in your life. When Mordecai went to her, she wasn't expecting that. She came there, and when he told her of the decree of what was issued, first thing that came inside of her, fear rose within her. She's the queen. But fear rose within her. And then Mordecai nailed it when he said to her. She looked at him, and he had to grasp her. You know, it's one of those movies where somebody get hold of you and go there. Get hold of yourself. Think. That's what she's going. Well, then, like she said, I know if I go before the king, I'll die. I can't change things. And then Mordecai hit her with where she was at. He nailed it when he told her. He says, don't think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape more than any of all the Jews. Don't think just because you're in the palace. There's something bigger happening here. For if you keep silent at this time, relief is still going to come because God has a covenant with his people. And we are not stationed to die. But right now, it's coming at you. So if you keep silent at this time, deliverance is going to come from someplace else. But you and your family, because you are part of all that heritage, will die. Then he tells her, for who knows whether you have come into your royal position for such a time as this. God had arranged for Esther. He put an appointed time in her life, an appointed moment. We all are going to be faced with this. They come in different packages in different ways, but the truth is still the same. God gives each of us a moment. There's an instance, there's a changing time, there's an alteration time in our lives where we're confronted with an issue. What are you going to do with this issue? A moment has been presented to you. Her moment was to freeze at what point? When God had put a moment in her life, and that moment that was so big was to go before the king and to plead for the people. That was her purpose of her birth. That was her whole reason to come into being. All her beauty and all the things, I don't care how well she can sing, I don't care how well she can cook. That wasn't the part of it. Yeshua came, and although he's a carpenter's son, he says, for this cause came I here. It wasn't about building tables. It wasn't about trying to be married as Joseph's son. That's, I'm part of all that. I can do all that. But that's not the call that God had for me. He stood before Pilate. Pilate said, so are you a king? He says, for this cause I came. Oh, what about the miracles? What about the teachings? Yeah, I did that. What about the healing? Yes, I can do that. What about the great place as a rabbi? I can do that. But I wasn't birthed just to teach and walk and leave this earth. I wasn't birthed to heal the blind and leave the earth. That was not the purpose. I came to redeem the world. For this cause came I into the earth. See, Hadassah Kapaitrawan says, I made Mordecai some great meals. I treat him as a daughter. I love him. I opened the all the neighbors love me because of my journey. But that wasn't why you're here. Those are just byproducts of your environment. When Haman did what he did, someone had to step forth. Mordecai couldn't do it. As knowledgeable as he was, he didn't have access to go into the king. All the other servants, no one, not a person, had access to the king to change his heart. No one. And for some reason, just by coincidence, Vashti had to be removed. There had to be a contest. Somehow there had to be an environment that was put into place where an orphan child who's not even part of royalty can come out of the hood, stand in the midst of all the people, and because of the attributes, be placed in a position that the crown sits on her head and has the favor in the heart of the king, where Haman had the ear of the king to speak and kind of manipulate him. Now, who can undo that type of manipulation? Who has the favor? Who has the insight? He said the king kept on raising him higher and higher, that he was highly favored. He said, but when Esther walked in the room after this situation, bringing her there, she walks in and all favor. From that moment forward, in the spirit realm, the kingdom shifted. The throne was given to her. She can do whatever she wants. Go back and look at it. The throne says, no one, not a person, no one. Vashti's gone, and she had a demonic mind that she wouldn't even been a part of this. But for some reason, God raises up this orphan, places the crown up on her, gives her the favor of the king, and she represents a people that's going to be wiped out. And when Mordecai came there, so I said, silence ain't an option now. If nothing, for this cause was she born. For this purpose was she born. Her purpose, with all her nice attributes and all of her looks and everything else, her purpose was to have access to change history. In one fell moment, God positioned her in a moment, her moment she was fighting for. The enemy scared her. That's what he does to us. When we're presented with issues, he tries to get us tightened up and paralyzed with fear so you don't do nothing. But she understands, she discerned, before I make a rash decision, she shut herself up with God, and when she came back in, she's operating in his timing. And she can understand, because as Mordecai says, why did he place you on the royal throne? There's something more than this. And then she said, when she understood that, she can tell and say very easily, for this cause was I born. You know, my parents left me. The kingdom left me. Everyone can look at me like I'm a commoner. See, everyone is looking at Hadassah. They look at her as an orphan. But God looked at Hadassah as Esther, a queen. That was her purpose and her destiny on earth. She had come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And that's what God tells us. He says, we're sitting here, he says, you have a plan, and God is mustering something in our lives. The third principle comes in and says, we must stand with courage. There comes a time in each of our lives, a moment. See, when Esther was confronted with that, she was willing to die to save her people. If I die, I die. What does God tell us in that? He says, sometimes we must stand in courage, even when it's not popular. We must stand in courage, even when it's not popular. We must stand in a way that we're willing to risk it all. That seems like a simple statement. That's why Yeshua says, unless you prioritize your life, he says, and you don't love father, mother, brother, sister, job, people before me, something's going to interfere. What's holding you? Sometimes you're confronted with an issue and your moment's right before you, but you think, if I do that, I'm going to lose my job. If I do that, I might lose the popularity of the people. If I do that, I'm going to make a lot of people mad. If I do this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So sometimes there comes a time when you have to stand for something, even when it's not popular. Be willing to risk it all. See, as you move forward in your destiny and you move forward in this life, your moment He's stepping before your moment. Satan will oppose us. And he will. And his attacks, the thing he's coming at us, is to interject fear, to paralyze our minds, to keep us in bondage. God can try and want to set you free. There's a lot of things you've been praying for, but you couldn't move. Because what he's going to do is he's going to hit you with that. And all of a sudden you stop, and you're trying to think like, what if, I don't know, maybe I'll just ponder. See, anything, the moments before you, and anything to get you to stay where you're at. Because you're trapped. I love that scene in the movie, what is it? Is it God's Not Dead? It's the first one. You remember the son that was the atheist? He was I think he was the brother of the woman that was dating the college professor. And their mother was in the nursing home. And he was very into himself and very affluent. He had money, he had power. But anyway, the scene comes up where he's looking at his mother, who was a believer. And she raised these two kids. And he makes a comment to her as he looks at her, and she stands there, and he sits in the room, and she has like Alzheimer's and stuff. And he looks at her and says, "Look at you. So all your life, you just, like you pray, and you do all the good things, you believe in God. You get doing all this thing." Because she had that real bad short-term memory. She couldn't remember stuff. And he comes in the room, he says, "She doesn't even recognize who I am." And so he's sitting there, he's looking at this, and he starts talking in the room, because she's sitting there, like she's looking off nowhere. And he sits there, he makes that comment to her, he says, "Look at you." He said, all your life, he said, you pray, and you believe in God, and you do all these good things, and look at you. He said, he has all this power, he has all this wealth. Look where I am at. And as he's making this comment, in the whole midst of it, she's looking like this, and just like that, she goes real clear. She's not looking at it, and she says, sometimes people think they have everything they need, and they think they're free, and I can't paraphrase everything, but in a sense, they think they have everything. They said they can come and go, and they get confident themselves. They live it's like they're living in a cage. He says that you go about life thinking you're in control of everything. He said, and then something like she said, and then everything ends and the door is shut. And there you are, you don't stop. And but how she spoke, he was like this, because she couldn't hardly put two words together. All of a sudden she stops, she gives this real clear symptom by saying, your outward signs is more than you think they are. You're trapped in your sin, and you don't even realize it. You're lost, and you don't even understand where you're at. But she's giving this little scenario real quick, and all of a sudden she stops and goes, "So who are you again? And what's your name?" But it made the people in the theater just stop for a moment, because it's like God moved into her and spoke to him real clearly, just for a moment. And that's where the enemy wants to keep us. A lot of times we look up and someone says, "God, I don't know." The enemy says, you're trapped and you don't even know it. And God's trying to address you at that moment. And the enemy wants to interject fear to keep us paralyzed in our minds, to hold us in that bondage. The fourth thing that came out of the story of Esther was fasting and prayer brings clarity of mind and intimacy with God. She said before she could move to make a life and death decision, she said she wanted to step before him. And the principle is that fasting and prayer brings clarity of mind and intimacy with God. She needed direction, she knew it. What was brought before her, she understood, I can't respond. But it was clear to her that a heavenly response was needed for this demonic earthly situation. This, what you're asking, what's before us, is above earth. There's no way I can speak to a king who don't even believe in you. There's no way I can undo a decree, because in this land, once the decree is made, no one, not even the king, can change it. But there's a situation in which the whole people are going to die, and I need direction. When I was reading that, it says, you know, some of us have wondered, gone through, why God will allow us to go through some of the things we go through. I don't understand. Some situations are tough. And when I look at them, I'm trying to bring resolution as to why. I don't understand. But see, again, when you turn to look and see God's hand in all situations, God, I don't understand this. I don't know what's taking place. See, but many times we don't understand that those things that we're looking at were used by God to put us in the right place at the right time for a moment of destiny. I can see Esther. I don't understand if I'm going to be a righteous Jew. What did I do wrong to be taken from my home against my will, placed in a palace, submitted to a man who's ungodly, forced to marry, but I don't even love him. I have been, you can say in one sense, I've been violated. God, what have I done wrong? I've honored Mordecai. I've honored my people. I've given honor to you, God. I don't understand the turn of events as to why I'm in here and what's going on. I had no makings of this. God, what is the task? What steps before me that I can't see? So when Mordecai looked at her and says, how do you know that you have been set aside for such a time as this? No one else can do what God's having you to do. God's seen Haman's plans. He's seen the change of events. He understood the whole nation. God had already spoken and gave covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. He had already covenant and defined that his son would come through the lineage of David. God had already spoken. How in the world would one human being undermine the plan of God? How can he turn around and destroy the people that God says, we told Abraham, through you the whole world will be blessed? How can he look and undermine the problem when God says, he will destroy those that harm him, and I'll bless those that keep you? Something had to take place in order to maintain the integrity of God's covenantal will. See, there's times we need God's grace. There's things that we don't understand. We can't figure out all the pieces and all the places. But we need God's grace. Fasting and prayer opens the portals. By fasting and prayer, opens the portals for spiritual growth. Fasting and prayer removes the distractions of life so that I can hear his voice. Fasting and prayer places us on a path to receive his direction. When she stood there before him, she says, I don't understand. There's no way I can there's no way I can move forward with what's going on. It's too demonic. It's too heavy. No one on earth, even a king, can't turn over. And God says, I'm the kind of God who turns the hearts of kings. So fasting and prayer brings clarity of mind and intimacy with God. Number 5, God requires obedience. Oh, Rabbi, Matt, that's the easy one. We know that. Yeah, but he does. It's almost like a fire sale. We say it so often, but sometimes it gets away from us. God requires obedience. Why? When that situation was placed before her, She had to enter a process of submission. Now, this is what we wore. Again, Yeshua said, Father, not my will, but your will. I had to step from my will, my desire, what I would purpose. But God, your will. I had to submit under your will, God, because you have a greater plan at work that I can't see. She had to humble herself to do some things she didn't want to do. For her desire, she wouldn't have stepped through that door to go before the king. She knew this man. See, the problem comes in at times. See, we all have sensed. Most of us in here. You haven't, it's true. But we all have sensed that we have a call of God in our life. I know that God has a plan for me. I know that God has a call for me. I know that God is going to do something with me. It's just that I don't know. God, I just don't know how to get to where you'll have me to be. And I said, sometimes the part comes in that we don't understand what God's doing behind the scenes. There's a hidden nature of his hands, and he's working with us all the time. See, God wants you to know there is a time for unveiling. I remember when people, again, I share this many times, when God called me into this ministry. I remember I had an uncle. His name was Bishop. And then I remember he looked at me before he passed. Incredible man, very sharp. He had a bad eye. He always kind of talked with his hand on his eye. You remember seeing, he'd say something like this. Kind of talk with a raspy voice a little bit. And he said, Mal, he says, it's your time. I'm talking about my mother, the family, the church, mother, family, the church and stuff. He says, I'm going to put her in your hands now. So it's up to you. You know, kind of guide the ship. You can do well. I'm like, I don't want to do that. What are we talking about here? You're a good man. I'm thinking like, they asked me to pastor and do different things, lead. I don't want to lead. I can make someone a great Joshua. I can help them. I can be a great support to someone. Just don't put me at the helm. You know, I'm okay. You're a good man. I'm thinking like, I got all these brothers and sisters. Look at all your cousins, all these people in church. You're going to bypass everyone and come up to me. Man, it's your turn. Oh my gosh. What's wrong with Sam? What's wrong with Phil? You got Robson over here. You got Stephen. You got people everywhere. Why are you talking to me? It's your time. Oh my gosh. And I remember, then I had the other bishop come up to me afterwards. I'm going to give you this church. I don't want the whole church. I don't want the leadership. I don't want that. I can make a great teacher. I can be a Sunday school teacher. I can be a board elder. I can sit over here and I can counsel. I can do anything. God, don't put me at the helm. I don't want to do that. I can't do that. Son, I'm going to give you that church down there in Waterloo. I don't want to go to Waterloo. I want to stay here and just do well. I'm going to be an artist. I want to just be a banker. I want to be this. I know where I want to be. I don't want to be what you guys keep saying. I want you to put you at the helm. I don't want the helm. Sitting in my closet. It's my little prayer room. And I'm thinking, God, this is going to be wonderful because I'm reading and he's showing me so many things. Oh, I can teach a class now, teach them this. Now he's speaking beside me. I want you to do the things I showed you in private in the open now. You know what that means? Everyone's going to be looking at me because I'm wearing things I shouldn't be wearing, or I'm acting certain ways, I've got In other words, God's saying, step up. I don't want the helm. I don't want the helm. But now I look back and I see the moment. When something changes your life, it all changes quickly. But there's another time, he said, God said, there's a time for unveiling. What I placed in you from birth is going to come forth. And when it does, you've got to submit it to him so that you can be able to walk it out through him. And then you must allow him to open the door to your moment. Your moment is before you. God's got a place for you. You can't walk ahead of him, can't walk behind him. He's got a moment. Lastly, God uses everything and everybody for his divine purpose. Now that's a kicker. You know that passage that says, God works all things together for the good. That means you must be involved in a lot of things, a lot of time, a lot of people, a lot of different situations. But he said, God uses everything and everybody for his divine purpose. He is God. He says, no part of our lives is left untouched. He sees all the pieces, he understands all the events. God is aware of every aspect of our life, whether we want him to be or not. He is aware of where we're at and what we're going through. Kick around, yell at him, but God is aware and he is setting in a position to speak into your life. See, I think it's funny. See, all the time while she was growing up, I can see her outside playing kickball or stickball with all the kids and stuff in the block, but she had no way of knowing that one day that she would be the one used to save her people from destruction. All the events are working together. Even when she was chosen queen, brought in there, she still didn't really understand the position that God had for her. She's got the crown, she's got set in a position, but somehow God already says, she didn't understand the full nature until Mordecai came up to you and throne and says, there has been a decree. Oh my God. I think she responded like she did back in the hood. Oh my God, can you believe? And Mordecai saying, only you have been brought here. You're sitting in a position of royal position. You're no longer Hadassah, the childhood favorite. You're the queen with access and the hand of God to change the decree of the destruction of the people. See, she had seen herself just as being a frightened young woman, caught up in things that she didn't have no control over. But God's plan for her all along was to exalt her. She was birthed for this moment, birthed for this season, born for this hour, to make her queen of the greatest kingdom on earth. That's what God saw. Again, when others seen her as a Hadassah, an orphan, God saw her as a queen, Esther. Not knowing this was to bring her all the events that's taking place. And this moment was to bring her to a single moment in her life as she stepped into her destiny. And that's what God is doing to us. And that's what God wants us to know. You know, what seems clouded, what seems, God, I'm not an Esther, I'm not a Mordecai, I'm not a king, I'm an island. I'm just a teacher, I'm just sitting here in this sanctuary. God says, you have no idea. See, I can use that same analogy when I try and says, I know for a fact, I'm not 100% certain, that Martin Luther King had no idea when he played in the neighborhood that God would work a series of events behind his life. If they told him as a little kid and said, do you know that you're going to stand up and arrest the nation and tell the nation, I have a dream? And feel where millions would be swayed by you arresting a broken situation. There's no way And you know, you probably see a little Baptist preacher would ever believe that he would touch millions of lives, and at his homegoing, he would lay in state in the capital, the nation's capital, where dignitaries from all over the world would come to speak. Now, if you tell me that Billy Graham knew that when he was teaching when he was younger, all the events, common people. We see bigness. And that's what God sees us. God says, each of us have a moment. He's working behind the scenes. You're going to be unveiled, and you'll never know the fullness of everything. Amen? Amen.